Okay, in this video we are going to be solving equations, one-step and then two-step equations. To solve one-step equations, you're going to isolate the variable using inverse operations. And if you take a look over here at inverse operations, we have add and subtract our inverse operations, and then multiply and divide our inverse operations. So if you take a look at this first equation, you will see 6x equals 54. So what is being done to x? Well, it's being multiplied by 6. So the inverse operation would be to divide by 6. I apologize for my writing. It's hard to do this on the computer. So whatever I do to the left, I've got to do to the right. So I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. And that is going to give me x on this side, because 6 divided by 6 is 1. And then on this side, I'm going to get 9. So the answer to this is x equals 9. So if you take a look at b, we are subtracting 12 from x. So the inverse of that would be to add 12. And again, it's kind of hard to write on here, so sorry about that. So we're going to add 12 to both sides, because whatever we do to the left, we've got to do to the right. And when we do that, we cancel this out, because that's 0. And we're just left with x. So we end up with x equals 28 for this one. Alright. It's better than my x equals 9 there. Alright. Then if you take a look at this 2/3 times x equals 8, well, what's being done to x? It's being multiplied by 2/3. Now normally we would divide by the number multiplying x, but in this case it is a fraction, and we don't divide by fractions. So rather than dividing by a fraction, if you remember back to our multiplying and dividing fractions part that we learned about a month ago, or maybe a little more, we know that instead of dividing by fractions, we actually multiply by the reciprocal. So we would multiply 2/3 by 3/2. And then whatever we do to the left, we do to the right. So we're going to multiply by 3/2. It's really hard to do this with a mouse pad. All right, and so let's get a color that works here, and let's get larger. There we go. Okay, so in this case, we actually get x equals 20. Let's see, no, sorry, 8 times 3 is 24 divided by 2, so it'd be 12. Again, you can use your calculators on this. All you have to do is do 8 times 3 ABC2. That is a 2, sorry. Okay, let's look at D here. So for D, we've got x divided by 6 equals 13. So the opposite of dividing x by 6 would be, or the inverse, would be multiplying by 6. And this is kind of like the idea of the inverse, because 6/1 is what we're really multiplying by. So we're going to multiply by 6. And when we multiply 6 times x over 6, these two 6's cancel out, and we're just left with x on this side. And then on the other side, 13 times 6 is 78, so x is 78 there. All right, so we're going to move on to two-step equation. To solve two-step equations, you're going to isolate the variable using inverse operations and gem this in reverse. So what that means is you're going to start by adding or subtracting the constant using that inverse operation. Then you're going to deal with multiplying and dividing the coefficient. So in A, we're going to start with the constant of +5 here. So we've got 3x plus 5 equals 23. And gem this in reverse says we're going to use add subtract first, because we're doing it the opposite way that GEMDAS normally shows. So we're going to deal with our constant first, which is plus 5. So we're going to do minus 5 from both sides of the equal sign. And when we do that, we have canceled out the 5's, so we're still left with 3x over here equals 18. And then we have to look at our coefficient and variable, and in this case we have 3x. So the 3 is multiplying the x, so we have to divide by 3 to get x by itself. We're isolating that variable, so whatever you do to the left, you got to do to the right. So we end up with 3 divided by 3 here is 1x, and then, or 3x divided by 3 is 1x, and then equals 6. So we've got our answer right here. Okay, if you take a look at the next one, we've got 4x minus 6 equals 42. We are going to deal with the constant first. So I am going to add 6 to both sides so we can cancel out this minus 6. And when I do that, I am still left with this 4x, which I'm going to bring down. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. And then if you take a look at 42 plus 6, we get 48. And then the next step would be to divide by 4, because the x is being multiplied by 4. And in the end, we get that x equals 12. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so over here we've got 3/5 x plus 6 equals 15. We're going to start with the constant, so we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. Okay. And when we do that, we end up with, probably not going to be able to do the fraction. This cancels out, so we've got excuse how this is written, we've got 3/5 x left on this side, and then on this side, we've got 9. So in order to solve 3/5 times x equals 9, we can't divide by 3/5. So instead we have to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 5/3 on both sides. On this side, that's going to give us 1x. So that cancels that out, times 5/3. So I'm left with x on this side. And let's see, 9 times 5 is 45. So we get that x is equal to 15. Alright, last one here. We've got d is x divided by 7 minus 3 is 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is deal with the constant. So I'm going to add a 3 to both sides. And I'm going to end up with x over 7 still on this side, or x divided by 7 on this side. And then on this side, I'm going to get 11. So then in order to solve x divided by 7, we're going to use the inverse operation. So we're going to multiply by 7. And in the end here, we get x on this side equals 77. Alright, if you have questions, please email me at emiller at mvcsd.us. Thanks so much. Hopefully this helped you with 1-step and 2-step equations.